So a couple days ago, I bought this. It's a 2001 BMW E39 540i M Sport. And for the common folk, it's a mid-size rear-wheel drive V8 sports sedan with a 6-speed manual. They're gorgeous cars and a blast to drive. Now, disclaimer, this car currently isn't running due to an unknown timing-related noise reported by the previous owner that he just didn't feel like paying to have diagnosed. And those of you familiar with these cars will know that they're prone to having the chain guides fail, and that's very likely what we're looking at here. For the price though, I couldn't pass this car up. The previous owner, who had bought it all the way back in 2004, had it listed on Craigslist for $2,500, and I went and checked it out with the hopes of at least pulling parts off of it for my other 540i. But after looking at the car in person, it was clear that it was way too good to just rip apart like that. So I told the previous owner that I had $1,200 and high hopes of saving it, which he accepted my offer, and the deal was done. So we're gonna go ahead and dive into diagnosing this thing, and from there we'll hopefully be able to repair it and put it back on the road, all of which we'll be covering in a little mini series here on the channel. So if you wanna follow along with all that, feel free to subscribe, and let's dive in. So here's what we're working with. The car is finished in steel blue metallic on the gray leather interior, and as I mentioned, this is an M Sport package car, which means you got the sport interior, which included the sport seats, the M Sport shift knob thing, and the sport wheel. You also got the sport suspension, which looks great on these cars. The wheels are all in fantastic shape. Underneath all the brake dust, the wheels were just refinished all the way around. We got brand new Continental Extreme contacts on all four corners. And I guess we can go ahead and just take a peek under the hood. Obviously you can't start it yet, but here's the M62 TU. It is a Vanos motor. It's a technical update to this engine. It's awfully oily under here. Pretty much every single rubber seal in this engine leaks. So depending on how this car ends up turning out, we will be replacing all of those along the way. But for the most part, everything looks good. Oil, there is oil. It's really dirty and it needs to be changed. Not a good sign, especially since these cars are prone to chain guide issues. Regular oil changes help delay that failure. It's likely that these chain guides have failed. But coolant looks good. Everything looks good. It seems that the story that the previous owner told me holds up, which gives me a little bit more faith in hopefully being able to make something out of this car and putting it back on the road. We'll go ahead and get started with diagnostics. We're gonna have to disable the fuel pump somehow and just crank the engine over just to see how things sound and to get all the tensioners primed up with oil so we're not listening to the chain clattering around artificially. And once we figured that out, well, I guess we'll have to see along the way. But you're tagging along, and this video will just be diagnostics, and depending on what we find in this video, future videos will just be repairs on that. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug the fuel pump and sender, and that's just because I couldn't really figure out for sure if or where the exact fuse for the fuel pump is, and the relay is tucked up under the glove box, and I don't feel like pulling that right now, so I'm just going to pull up the back seat and unplug that. Alright, our back seat is out. Doesn't look like anyone's ever been in here before, because these perforations have all never been torn. So, feels bad, but you gotta break in there. It's not really a huge deal. It all sits under the seat. And then under that, I think there's 3 Phillips screws on each of these. So that pulls up through there. Alright, so this, I believe, is the pump, and I believe the sender is on that side.
You should be able to turn the key on, and if it doesn't
Prime,
it's you got it.
Okay. I'd say this car doesn't like having the fuel pump unplugged.
How long do you want it to turn?
Maybe like 3 seconds for the first try. I couldn't really tell if it sounded like something was slapping or not.
But it's cranking even.
It is. So I think it probably is a chain slapping around that's making this noise, but we're going to try it again with a jump pack on it just to make sure that we have full voltage while we're cranking it. So it sounds like that clacking noise is coming from this part of the engine, and it looks like in here on this cam chain, the tensioner is awfully slack. You can see kind of that it wiggles around a little bit. It should be pretty tight from my experience, and I shouldn't be able to just move it around with my finger like I am. I'm clear though. If you want to crank it, I'll watch it. No, I mean it's definitely loose, but it's not a problem. It's not in time with the chain moving. The chain's not moving very quick. It might be a problem with a valve. It's hard to say because I don't know how long this car's been sitting either. So the oil might be drained down from the lifters and it might just be lifters ticking, but it's hard to say. It feels tighter than it did before you just cranked it.
It's pretty tight.
Yeah, so.
The tensioner might have moved.
It probably filled with oil.
Mm-hmm.
So the sound somewhat resembles a spark plug that's backed out. So I'm gonna pull this cover off and check that over here. Sound is definitely coming from this side of the engine though. So we've narrowed that down, which doesn't really make sense if it is the chain guides that's gone bad, because I don't really hear the sound of a chain. I mean, maybe they are bad, but that ticking sound, probably not from that, from my understanding. But we're gonna go ahead and just pull this off. That's like sealed on. I need a flathead. Oh, no, that's got it. All right, so I'm gonna feel one by one to try to figure out which it is, front to back. Now, I don't know. It sounds like it's coming forward of the spark plug. So you do it again. No, it's coming forward. It's definitely up in the chain section. Next, I say we pull the tensioner and look at the tensioner to see if that's gone flat. So yeah, we'll start with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the airbox out to get down to that tensioner, and we'll be back when that is done. All right, so we got the airbox out, and just gonna go ahead and try to get on this tensioner up in here. It's in a precarious location, and you have to have the perfect combo of extensions and wrenches to be able to break that off.
Are you ready?
Yep. Oh, I don't know if that got it or not. Oh, yes it did.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
July.
It's got a little bit of tension left to it. No, it doesn't. So there's that end. This usually comes out like so. And there's a spring in there. Spring's got springiness. I'll put that back together. Usually they come out a little bit further. When they're brand new, they come out to about there. This is down there. I've seen them totally collapsed, and that's when they're shot. So instead of doing goofy stuff trying to add and guess preload with the old tensioner, I just went ahead and bought a new one. And this is actually an updated tensioner. And all it is it has a longer spring in it. As you can clearly see, it is significantly longer, has much more throw on it. Is the spring compressed because of age? Yes. But even when it was new, it didn't quite have this much length or preload in it. So we're just going to go ahead and throw this in. They're still running about 65 bucks for them. Kind of pricey for what it is, but worth it for the car. All right, so we got the new tensioner in. We're going to crank it a little bit just to prime everything up with oil, and then we'll give it a listen. Yeah, it's because there's no oil in the tensioner. I mean, I guess just crank it for a couple seconds and we'll see if it fills with oil and changes the sound. No, it doesn't. So one thing to note that might be anecdotal is it didn't feel as difficult to put this tensioner into this as it did on my silver car. And I'm wondering if it might be that the tensioner guide has failed in some way. So there's just so much slop in the chain because the guides have failed. Well, it doesn't even have to be that specific guide. They would put slop in the chain if any of the guides failed, really. Definitely hasn't really had a chance to prime up with oil.
You want me to crank it a little bit more?
Yeah, we'll give it a little bit more. That's a lot better now. Do it again. that sounds like it's ready to be run. I mean, is it possible and likely that the chain guide has failed somewhere? Yeah, but still, that's significantly better. If it is just the tensioner, the tensioner doesn't just fail. It's something that kind of gets worse over time. So the only harm that could do is if the plastic pieces get sucked up to the oil pickup. It's got a screen on it, and it'll reduce your oil pressure. But we're not hammering on the car. We're just gonna idle it and see what it sounds like. I don't think it would damage anything. Yeah, we'll throw the airbox back on and see if she'll start up. Hopefully the fuel is good. I don't really know how long this was sitting at that shop, so
It'll be okay.
it'll be fine. So we got the fuel pump plugged back in, and we're gonna go ahead and try to give her a start. Alright, you can shut it off. Doesn't sound good.
No.
So based on the way it was running, it definitely sounded like the timing had jumped at some point, probably due to failed chain guides and or a failed timing chain tensioner. I went ahead and ran a check engine light and confirmed that to be the case. Both bank 1 and 2 are saying that the camshaft position is over advanced. So, and there's a number of other codes in here that I got to look at. This is likely due to the same issue. That's bank 2 over advanced, and then camshaft position sensor, a whole lot of other things. So yeah, this just confirms that at some point the timing jumped, and hopefully it didn't hurt anything like valves, but we'll see. So just to wrap this video up, it seems like only the timing is off. That's all we can tell right now, at least. In the next video, we'll go ahead and start tearing into the engine a little bit to see what we're working with. It's entirely possible that the car is jump timing because of the chain guides failing. So we'll see. And hopefully we don't have to tear it down too much. But hopefully it's just a matter of resetting the timing and cranking it and checking compression on everything. And hopefully it was just like the slack in the tensioner that allowed it to skip. It's hard to say. Jumping timing is not a common thing on these, and with how common it is for the chain guides to fail, it's likely that that's what we're looking at here. But anyway, we'll address all that in the next video, and we'll have to see along the way. You're welcome to tag along. Again, feel free to subscribe, and we'll catch you then.